Hi friends, for this science activity today we're going to be looking at 3 different habitats. We're going to be looking at the desert where it's nice and hot and dry and sometimes windy. We're going to be looking at the marshlands where it's very, very, very wet. And then we're going to be looking at the prairie where there's lots of sunshine and a bit of rain as well. And down here we're going to be looking at 3 different plant types. So this first plant has it looks almost like a Christmas tree, like bristly leaves. This middle plant is spiky, like similar to a cactus. And this last one has big, broad leaves on thinner stems. Then we're going to be going over here and looking at 2 different root types. We're going to be looking at, let me click out of the leaves here so you can see the roots. The first roots are shallow. They don't go very deep. So they come down a little ways and then they spread out. So they're very close to the surface of the land. And the next set of roots go deeper. So they go down, 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 and then they spread out down below. So they're farther away from the surface of the land. So this activity today is going to look at what kind of plants live best in these different environments. Again, we have the desert where it's hot and dry with not a lot of rain, the marsh where it's very, very wet, and the prairie where it's sunny and some rain. So let's start here with our first plant that's similar to like a Christmas tree, like pine needles plant. And we will add, let's start with the shallow roots on there, and let's see what happens if these plants grow or not under these conditions. So you can see this plant with the short, with many, many, many leaves grew really, really well in the marsh. And you can see how much the roots grew down compared to over here. The plant did not do very well. Oops. Try again. Doesn't want me to talk to you guys about this apparently. Here, this plant, the plant died, it wilted and died, and then the roots kind of shriveled and shrank up a bit. And then over here in the prairie, it grew pretty well too, but look, the roots stayed closer to the top, whereas in the marsh, they grew deeper down. Okay, let's try the plant number 2, which is the spiky cactus type of plant with the same type of roots. The short, shallow roots. Let's see what happens with this plant's growth. Wow, you can see how this plant really favors the desert. It grew nice and tall. Roots are nice and spread out on the marsh. It did not like the water as much and turned a bit yellow. And then it grew pretty well in the prairie also. The roots stayed smaller, but it definitely grew the best in the desert. All right, let's go to the next plant with a taller stem and broader, bigger leaves. Same roots. We'll compare the same roots and see what happens with this plant. Where does this plant grow the best? Wow, this plant really likes the watery environment or habitat. You can see how tall it grew compared. The desert, it did not grow well in the desert at all. It grew okay in the prairie, but its best location for growth it was in the marsh where there's lots of water. And you can see how the roots went deeper again. All right, let's go and try the other root system, which is the deeper root system with the same types of plants. So the short plant with lots of leaves with deep, deep roots. Let's see where this plant grows the best, which environment. Wow, this plant is growing the best as far as height and health of the plant. Over here in the prairie, it grew very tall, and the roots went down deep into where they can find the water. It did okay in the desert, didn't do very well in the marsh at all. So it doesn't, this type of plant does not like the wet environment with the long roots. Let's try the spiky cactus type plant with the long roots. See what happens. Where will this plant grow the best? It appears that it really prefers the desert where it can reach deep down into the ground for water and grew nice and tall. Did not do very well in the wet environment and did okay in the prairie, but not as well as in the desert. And then let's go to the broad, big leaves with the long stems. Let's see how this plant does with the long root system. Where will this plant grow the best? Okay, you can see this plant did very well in the prairie. The roots went way down deep. Did not grow very well in the marsh. The leaves turned yellow and the roots did not look healthy at all, and did not have very many leaves growing in the desert. So this type of plant grows really well in the prairie where there's some sun, but not too much sun where it's too hot, and where the roots can grow deep down and find the water. Here it is again. Sorry about that. You can see how much better this plant likes the prairie where there's some sun and plenty of rain down here that is seeped down into the soil, but not too wet. It does not like it too wet, and it does not like it too dry either. So plants will find the best location for them to grow in, and you'll see the same type of plants in the same habitats, and they need those habitats to supply their needs for growth. All right, guys. Hope you guys enjoy your activity today in your science journal.